So I'm from VACRO, which is Victorian Association for the Care and Resettlement of Offenders. In Australia.
Off you go.
Off I go.
Oh, you're taking.
Yeah, right.
And we've been around for about 145 years.
Good.
Yeah, I know, don't I? I have this massive knowledge that I've gained over all that period of time, and have been through lots of name changes. And so in that sense, fairly recently, we've started, so we've always been around the prison system and always been working with prisoners, and fairly recently, which is really around 30 years at least, we've been working also with the families and the kids. So maybe I'll grab my notes while we keep doing that. So today, really what I want to talk to you about is the Family Links pilot, because one of the things that I know it's been happening in America certainly, and it was, Anne mentioned it yesterday morning, is about the concept of being able to focus on these families and these kids at an earlier point in time. So we really started looking at our research around the point of arrest and court before they get to prison. You know, we do have family workers in prison, etc. However...
Just use that arrow there, otherwise it takes forever.
Okay, no worries. So that's a little bit about VACRO. I won't go into it too much because, you know, we're running out of time. But basically, to achieve what we want to see with the families and children, we've taken a lead role in Victoria in supporting the families of offenders by investing in a fairly significant evidence base there, which just sort of goes to the question earlier today. So 2006, we did some work called Children Unintended Victims of Legal Process that looked at what policies and practices and procedures do exist at arrest with police, at court, at prison, and pretty much it found out that yes, there was really not very much at all, and it was really only related to child protection and the removal of children, and nothing else about their well-being and nurturing and thriving. So then we looked at an action paper to say these are the things that needs to happen. Since that point in time, not much has changed, I'd have to say. Then in 2009 we did court-based family support, where we started to look at, well, what can we do as we're a very small, tiny organisation. So we scoped what would support look like if we were able to introduce family support into the criminal court environment, and this designed a model, and it's all on our website, which I haven't put on the PowerPoint, I realise.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. You've got it. So then we just started looking for funding. In the meantime, we did another smaller piece of work called Next Generation on the Outside, which is similar to the Children Unintended Victims, but really simplified it down with the hope that maybe this will help government sort of go, okay, we just need to do this, this and this for starters. So it's a sort of fairly easy framework to follow. And we have been told that Corrections does use it as a bit as their Bible. So I'm going to go with that. And then we did a small piece of data collection because, similar to what everyone else is saying, we can't access data in Victoria. So we looked at community correctional clients. I'll give that a skip because we all know what the issues are. So, why family support at criminal court? So the study that I referred to, the court-based family support, looked at what a more integrated approach to supporting vulnerable families. And this is what we were really asking. What contribution to identifying and addressing child vulnerability could be made by the magistrates' courts? for any differences, magistrates' courts hears all the summary offences, and also conducts committal hearings in relation to serious offences. As we all know, these are adult domains. That's been talked about earlier as well. So the approach that we've taken this morning was talked about in terms of it being child focused. I think we would call it family inclusive practice is a term certainly in Australia. And for us, that's also about that the child shouldn't be pulled out separately. The child is part of the family. And that was about not wanting to go down the track where youth services are all about the youth, all about the young person, and almost quite divorced from their family. And we want to take that whole of family approach. So in Australia, some of the work that's been happening around family inclusive practice has started more in the health sector, so areas where parents have got mental health or areas where they're dealing with drug and alcohol, they might be introducing child-focused workers into that. And that's the concept that we're trying to talk about. One of the ways I also sort of describe it when I'm trying to talk to government is about, okay, prisons, courts, they're public institutions, so are hospitals. And yes, in the hospital, the patient is the core client and they're surrounded by doctors and nurses and specialists. But also, well, certainly in Australia, I'm not sure how it is in other countries, we also have banks of social workers in those hospitals that deal and provide a holistic approach to that patient. And that's what we need in these institutions. It's really common sense. And that seemed, to me, is a really easy way to describe it, but I still haven't had any success yet. But I'm sure we all just keep plugging away. So in terms of data, our original study here looked at, just in Victoria, there was about 70,000 kids in a year who's had a parent go through criminal court. So that's a lot of kids in 1 year who we know then have already dealt with the issue of police and that trauma that's associated to that, potential media, legal issues, and the fear of a parent going to prison. Out of those numbers, and again, these were all guesstimates extrapolated from all sorts of data areas, it looked at around 3,000 kids who would actually have a parent go to prison in that year. But wouldn't it be fantastic if we could all get some real information? So what I want to do is take you through the model now, and as we go through that, I'm going to be mixing. I've got Roger here who did the actual evaluation of the project, and I'll mix the data in, and you'll be able to tell that I'm not a research or data person, but Roger might jump up and say anything at any point in time to help. So I had the pleasure of actually project managing the pilot over 3 years. So basically it was simply to establish a functional referral pathway in an adult criminal court. But the staff worked with the families outside of court, but they also liaised with the defendants in court. The eligibility for the families was about they had to have children, dependent age children. They had to be at risk. It wasn't very hard to find them. Vulnerable, or first-time families as well, who were learning to deal with that issue. And we definitely found that Magistrates Court is a fantastic and appropriate place to find these families at an earlier point in time. One of the reasons why we believe that a justice-focused agency should be taking on this type of role is, as many of us would know, it's incredibly difficult to work in the correctional environment. It was almost as difficult to work within the court environment as well. It was at times quite hostile. Why are we needing to deal with these really similar issues to what we all experience at the prison? Absolute lack of understanding about families and their needs. And that was right down to the lawyers as well, whom we were trying to engage to make those referrals. And that's backed up by some of the stakeholder interview comments as well. I'll go through. So I thought I'd start with a couple of case studies before I actually describe the model. So I'm doing it all arse about face, basically. So for example, yes, we were responding to vulnerable children. So this is Jake, who was 16. He lived with Dad, and Dad was looking at quite a long stretch in prison, and they lived in government housing. So that housing was going to be lost with Dad going to prison. So really all the Family Links worker had to do was be proactive, liaise with the government service involved with the housing, and liaise with youth services, school, etc. And so they were able to organise that Jake could take over the lease while Dad was in prison, that the intensive youth services came in to support and monitor him, but he was at school every day. Really great neighbourhood neighbours who were also part and parcel of caring for him, and it all worked out well. And 2 years down the track, he'd completed school, he'd completed apprenticeship and was working and living independently. So we all know, so it wasn't difficult stuff, it's not difficult stuff to do, but we all know what would have happened if you didn't have that family worker based at court. He would have lost the housing, he would have become homeless, he probably wouldn't have completed school, yada, yada, yada. We've talked a lot about the importance of school and being around the education system. So Olive is a long-termer, been dealing with her son for a long time. So she's already really integrated with child protection systems and drug support services, but this was the first time involved with the criminal justice system. So just really overwhelmed. So all she needed was information, just basic information. This is the system, this is how it works, this is who you need to talk to, this is what you need to do. And having a constant contact person that she could go back to. So easy, simple stuff. So this is the pilot. All criminal cases, a case where there isn't a serious effect on the family, not for our program. A case where there is, we had a range of formal referral sources, most of which did not work. It was very much like trying to get referrals in the prison system. Really hard to, they were very immovable, very difficult to integrate the concept of identifying the family needs. We got more referrals through the informal referral services, the defendants themselves, the families themselves, cold face-to-face in the court environment, going down under court, down to the police cells to talk to the defendants down there. That worked better. Although in the long run, we had a lot of support from courts policy above, and they actually came back to us with a better idea. If I get time, I'll talk about that. Service screening, a really normal but brief intervention family service, where it might be about initial family support, it might be about slightly longer term support, it might be about the information and co-working with other agencies and organisations. So there's no average length of time for support. It's dependent and it's flexible on the family. That's just a brief overview of how many clients we actually were able to evaluate the program on. Don't think we need to go into that, given we haven't got a lot of time. So this is more about when we talked about that there was different needs. As you can see, 40 of the families used 7 to 9 different types of the services. So obviously justice information was the greatest need, emotional support, relationships maintained, and then down to financial assistance. So just having that multiple range of service options, it meant the families could choose what was suitable to them, and that also affected the amount of time that came. So it really was about flexibility in the service delivery, and always remembering it was called Family Links because it's a links program. It was never intended to replace anything that already existed in the community in terms of family and child support. It was just placing something in an environment where families were not normally seen to, and making those assessments and information and links. So obviously the preferred time to see the families was post-arrest, but it might have been then, it might be picked up at trial, or it might be already imprisonment if someone went straight to remand. It would be families who have no experience of the system, or it might be recurring criminality, and then identifying that the family functioning and risk factors might also be different for every family. So if it's no experience, it might be these particular responses. Recurring criminality, it might be those plus, but it was all varying, and the flexibility was really, really key. And I think from Roger's evaluation, that was one of the key things from the families that they appreciated, is that they had that choice. It wasn't about, oh, no, sorry, you don't fit, we can't help you. So again, first timers. So for Zoe, brand new, going to have a brand new baby. She already had a lot of services in place as well, and she also just needed information, whereas the Olive previously, while she was already connected with lots of systems, the support that the worker gave around working with the school really made a huge difference for her. It meant she could continue on managing around the child protection stuff, and didn't need to deal with the school issue where the grandson was acting out, and that resolved. You know, it was amazing to see that a school could accept that information and go, yep, we're going to step up here and put some things in place for this child. Another one where we're talking about repeat offenders, and B was apparently quite reluctant to accept the support of the program, but simply by having brokerage money, that was the enticement to get her in. And once she was in, she was really really grateful for the kind of support that it could provide. So it was also about ensuring that we were finding families who were at risk. So you can see that the bulk of the families we picked up had between 6 and 3 risk factors. So that's around mental health, drug and alcohol, homelessness, etc., family violence, those sorts of issues. So we know that it was very easy to find the families that we really wanted to provide intervention for. We might just skip that one and go quickly to what did this evaluation tell us? So over 30 months of the trial, after interviews, stakeholder interviews with clients, and the review of the literature, we found out it does reduce risk to children, it does increase levels of self-reliance, and just simply understanding the system, as we all know, is quite complex. There were absolutely plenty of referrals and links to other support services in the community, and reduced risk of financial and housing trauma. So I think what you can see from the examples that I've given, as I said, it's not difficult, it's nothing that no one else is doing when we're working with families the point of prison. It's just that we're doing it earlier at court, which is obviously going to be better for the families and kids. That if we can get these things in place before mum or dad goes to prison, we've really got that opportunity to strengthen the resilience of that family and keep them going forward. They're moving into that period of time and finally, the 6 findings. Yes, it's an effective place to do this. Yes, there's a need for a child-centred approach and a family inclusive approach. There's clearly demand at the point of court. It focuses on problem solving and resilience. It doesn't duplicate or compete with any other service. In fact, quite the opposite was found. And it's proactive, and in terms of selling it to government, it demonstrates value for investment. So I think what we've found in the actual published evaluation, which again is available on the website, is the model's there. We're really keen to see it replicated in other places. So there is another organisation in Victoria who's taken it up, but Roger's been talking to individuals in Canada as well.
I'm currently sweating on funding for another 3-year pilot project. Take the same model, put it in a lower level court in near Toronto, in Canada. And we want to compare and contrast the two. And this is part of, I think, our message today.
Yes.
Our concluding message, in effect, is that we like to look at replicating what is a very simple and cost-effective model that doesn't compete, as we mentioned, with other services, that does have impact on protecting children. And it's been demonstrated. We think it's quite a sophisticated approach that actually can deliver outcomes for whole families and children. And so our contact details are on the back of that little flyer there, and you can download the report from either website, and we'd be very keen to look at running other pilots, 3-year type pilots, in other jurisdictions around the world, to see how adaptable the model can be.
I think the more data and information we can keep gathering, the better for all of us. So thank you, and any questions?